A short distance past Londonderry on Route 11, just east of the entrance to Magic Mountain, the ski area, a debate continues to simmer over plans by the state's Department of Forests, Parks, and Recreation to make some improvements to Lowell Lake State Park. The lake, which offers opportunities for boating, fishing, and swimming, covers about 100 acres out of the more than 350 acres altogether contained within the state park. About 20 years ago, proposals were discussed about how to upgrade the park, and some of the ideas under discussion included rehabilitating some buildings in the park for overnight use and upgrading some trails and picnic areas. Some of those ideas were dusted off earlier this year at a public meeting held last February. That was followed in turn by a public meeting held in Londonderry in early December, where some residents raised concerns about the plans. One concern mentioned frequently was whether fixing up the cabins around the lake for overnight use would draw more visitors to the lake than the area could comfortably handle. Some said the park is already overcrowded and environmentally vulnerable, and adding parking spaces and overnight stays in the cabins would make the situation worse.
And on a busy day when the parking is full, I haven't personally counted the number of boats out on the lake, but it's not the same environment as was originally thought of back when the park was being formed. It's a very different experience. It's a little bit more like, being at a large bathtub with a lot of people in it. The idea of increasing the parking, and I don't dispute the fact that there is more demand for parking. The problem, though, in my mind, is that you can continue to increase the parking. Odds are more people are going to want to come. The parking is going to continue to increase. And unless at some point there's some recognition that Lowell Lake was and is kind of a unique spot, it's mostly unique when it's a little bit quieter.
Ethan Phelps, the Forest Park and Recreation Regional Manager for Southeast Vermont, told the audience that night that the agency had developed a long-range management plan for the park and is looking to develop a master plan for the park next. He described some of the plans in the background to us during a visit here to GNAT-TV.
We know we need to make some changes as far as facilities to accommodate our current user needs, because we've had a pretty dramatic attendance growth for day visits in the park. User types have changed in the past 20 years with a dramatic increase in kayaking, stand-up paddle boards, and self-propelled watercraft, which is a use that was pretty minimal in the late 90s when the original long-range management plan was adopted. The other thing is it's time that we take a serious look at our options for the historic core of cabin buildings from the old Lowell Lake Lodge and Lowell Lake cabins that were operated by Preston White for about 45 years. Those are considered to be a historic district of buildings. They're pretty unique to have that type of cabin camping resort, and we need to just really evaluate what our options are for those, and how feasible it is to try and reuse some of them or all of them for overnight lodging, which was one of the things that was originally agreed upon in the plan that was adopted in 1999. So
Robert Need, the previous town administrator for Londonderry, said he was concerned about the absence of a thorough study of the environmental impacts that could come with the improvements.
I think our primary concern is that the park's plan will significantly increase the usage of the park, particularly with overnight camping and facilities and accoutrement for the visitors to the park. And there really has not been a thorough, comprehensive environmental impact analysis of what the impacts could potentially be. This lake, because of its shallowness, already is classified as having a critically low level of dissolved oxygen, meaning that things like sedimentation and runoff and erosion could really impact the ecology of the lake fairly quickly. So what we'd like to see is a preliminary environmental impact assessment done in parallel to the development of the plan.
Upgrading the park is not a new idea that just came out of the blue, he added.
It's interesting to note that some iteration of this plan has been in existence since the late 90s. So this is not a new idea. This is something the Park, Forest and Recreation has looked at for quite some time. They did sign off on an addendum to the 1999 plan this past July, so it is moving forward incrementally. They are now undertaking what's called a master plan, which is, I guess, the final version of what the plan will be. But from a community perspective, we have moved forward. We have formed a working group, and there is a 10-person core working group and some ancillary groups that will form subcommittees to look at various aspects of the plan and ultimately make recommendations to the state and see if we can reach some sort of compromise moving forward that will prioritize a close look at the environmental impacts.
The next steps in the process will include more public meetings and public input, Ethan Phelps said, adding that doing nothing was not really an option given the amount of use the park was already seeing.
We're at a point now where with the visitation we have to provide some management. With 14,000 people, we've got to provide some sort of ability to manage parking in a better way, provide some facilities. Right now we're doing that with portable toilets. We would like to replace those with composting toilets, which are a more permanent and certainly more pleasant structure for people to use. We would like to make some improvements to the boat launch to improve traffic flow and improve the stormwater management of that, to just make it a better and more pleasant place to be. As far as the cabins and the historic buildings, if we do nothing to those, they'll deteriorate further, which we don't want. So, as a state entity, we're obligated to maintain those historic structures.
For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.